adjustment in the business world. I think it was probably difficult for him. Anna was an avid gardener. She would greet people and everything. She was very embarrassed about her hearing problem. And the very first hearing aids that came out were big black boxes, and they were really difficult. And so she would greet everyone, but quite often in the early days, she would be a little standoffish because she was embarrassed about her hearing problem. Then later on, of course, she got one of the smaller black boxed hearing aids, is my understanding. Presidents have been here. We have documented that Teddy Roosevelt spent 2 weeks here, and William Howard Taft spent 3 nights here in the presidential suite. Unfortunately, I can't show that room to you tonight because we have a guest there, but I'd like to show you at another time because it's got a beautiful view of the lake. We have, okay, they went on and Thornwood, well, when it was sold out of the family, none of the family has ever returned to Thornwood. It was sold to a gentleman that Anita thought was going to maintain. He had the money and thought that he would maintain this as a single estate. Well, he quickly divided up, his name was St. John, he divided up the lots, and also back over where the original entrance to Thornwood, you go back to the end of the garden, and go back to the next gate down, and that was the original entrance to Thornwood. There's beautiful oak maple trees, and it's really lovely. And we have opened up, there's a hole at the end of the garden in the wall in the back. Excuse me just a moment. Let me see. Can I help you? You're welcome to join us. This is the Lakewood Historical Society. You're welcome to join us and listen in if you like. Let's see, where was I? Here's a couple of chairs if you want to come in. Okay. So we put a hole in the gate. My husband has ordered the gate. We're putting a gate at the back of the garden so that the people that live on the other side can come in and look at the garden. All these years, they've only been able to look across a wall to see the garden. So all of our neighbors over here will have a combination lock, and they'll be able to come in anytime and enjoy the garden or show it to their friends and to their children. So we're excited to be able to do that. We also have a lot that goes on the other side of the garden with beautiful old growth trees, and we have plans to restore a water garden there similar to what was here originally. Let me see, I'm kind of lost. I got my train of thought broken. When St. John sold it to Mrs. McMillan, Mr. and Mrs. McMillan, and then he died and she married a Palmer, so she's Mrs. McMillan Palmer. They had St. John wanted to turn Thornwood into apartments. Well, when Chester made his will, he willed that Thornwood would always be a single-family residence. And this was in litigation to try to break his will for 15 years. And they finally were able to break his will and to turn Thornwood into apartments. And as I said, none of the family, according to the grandson, ever returned to Thornwood once it was sold. They were so unhappy about some of the things that had happened, about it becoming apartments, and so they never returned. And he has promised me that when he comes back to town, he is 80 years old. His name is Chester Thorne Horse, and when he gets back, he is going to come and visit us. He's on his 8th around-the-world trip, and he said Anita, the daughter of the Thornes, lived just 3 months short of 100 years old, so he's got a little while, so he's getting his traveling in and going all around the world. buildings here were designed by Olmsted. So we're busily trying to, Richard Myro started it and we're going to finish it. It's one of 5 gardens registered with the Smithsonian Institute. They have a special exhibit. It's called Garden Restorations 1900 to 2000, I believe that's the name of it. It's going to be one time on the West Coast. It's a touring exhibit. It's going to be out for 5 years. It's going to be on the West Coast one time in June. It will be at the Clackamas County Museum, I believe. We were fortunate enough. We were in Washington, D.C. and just a few months ago, and so I called to see what they were doing because I knew that I kept hearing that they were going, Richard had told me they're going to do something about Thornwood. So I called and they said, oh yes, we've just opened that exhibit. So it was very thrilling to be able to go into the rotunda of the Arts and Industries building and see Thornwood. It's quite an interesting display, and it really says great things about the Northwest, and it's really very interesting to see. So it was thrilling for us, and we were able to, they normally don't allow you to take photographs, and they allowed us to take photographs of the exhibit. So we have those photographs to share. When this was turned into apartments, these ceilings were all covered in this room and in the Great Hall. The Great Hall then had, when you came in the door, you came into about maybe a 6-foot wide hallway that went down. You could not see the staircase, and just to your right was a full kitchen in this room and a small parlor. The great fireplace as it exists now and as it did originally was covered, and there was just a small little fireplace. This fireplace was covered, these ceilings were covered, these walls were solid. So when the ABC Disney folks came here via the Washington Film Commission, and they wanted to see Thornwood, and so we agreed. Then they were looking around, and normally when you come into a house of this size, you're expecting to walk into some, and have a few large rooms. Well, we just had, everything was chopped up. So I said, well, and so Thornwood would not work for them. And I said, I'm sorry, we used to have the large rooms, and I showed them the plans, and we were just, we had dreamed about being able to do this someday. So there were about 13 of them, and they all went to lunch, and they came back after lunch. They went over to Mimi's kitchen, had a great time, came back, and they wanted to know if we'd consider a restoration, and we said we would consider it. Then they sat down at the table, and all of their artists and everything, they did all of these renderings and drawings of Thornwood. They videotaped the house from top to bottom, inside out, everything about it, overnighted it to Stephen King. And his mini-series was originally set in L.A. He rewrote the script. So now it's set in Seattle. Unfortunately, we had very little influence. We would have preferred it to have been Tacoma, but we don't have Space Needle in Tacoma, so. So anyway, so he did rewrite it because it was a set for LA, and you can't very well explain old growth trees in LA. So that was kind of the way that we got into this, and once they had submitted their drawings and their videos, they were pretty much stuck with Thornwood. They had been waiting to do this film because they needed a house, a certain kind of a house. Stephen King is very finicky about his productions, and he wanted a house that was warm and friendly, that you would go into and never suspect that there was anything going on there. And Thornwood is just that kind of a house. It's warm and friendly. It does have kind of like a life of its own, but it's a very peaceful place. I had one lady who spent the night here. She was blind, and she was up on the 3rd floor, and she came down, and she was so thrilled and excited. She said she'd had the best night's sleep that she had had in a long time. That she had seen angels all night. Her room was filled with angels, and she said, and I should know. And so she just claims this house is filled with angels and it's just great. And boy, I certainly hope so, because it feels that way to us. It's very pleasant to live here. It isn't, I've never been afraid here. It's just a comfortable home. And we're just fortunate that we're able to share it. When they began to restore, they took all the old photographs. We got many from the Historical Museum over in Eastern Washington, and we had some pictures that Debbie and Richard had left for us, and so they tried to come as close as they could to what it was originally without, as much as they could financially. They spent $500,000 on this restoration. That's for these 2 rooms. I just don't know where all the money went, but they didn't give us any of it. This is what we got. And this is, I hope everyone enjoys it a lot, because my husband and I paid for this with 6 months of our lives, and when you get our age, 6 months is, we like our life, and we don't like to waste any of it. So they did a nice job putting in a lot of new things. Now, a couple of things that are really important, and I think what saved the day, as far as when this house was apartments, this house was extensively damaged. I'm not sure I would have had the courage that Richard and Debbie had when they walked into it. There was heavy, heavy water damage. Everything was overgrown. It was totally, and still is in many ways, a white elephant. Paul Allen looked at this house and didn't want it because too many neighbors. He wanted more of an estate. It costs a lot of money to upkeep. When they went to put dormers and things on the house for the movie, they took off some tiles. Oh, by the way, every tile on this roof, it's like a giant puzzle. Everyone has a number. By the way, how much time do you have? Am I doing okay? Okay. Every tile has a number, so it's like a giant puzzle. But when we went to, and Richard had warned us about special spots that tend to leak more than others, and he had some repairs done. Well, we noticed that because it's been up there almost 100 years, all of their, like tar paper, it's not tar paper, it's something else, but it's powder. So we thought, we got some estimates on the roof, and to redo the roof and replace it with the proper paper and everything, the estimate is $248,000. So we're thinking, okay, we don't want to really re-roof the house today. So we'll do it a section at a time, and we will do preventative maintenance. So we got started, and I can show you as we go up the stairs, you'll see big cracking paint in the ceiling. Well, we didn't have that, but before the roofer came. So we had a roofer come and start to redo these valleys and redo sections at a time. So we can get it done for about $10,000 a section. So we're going to do one section at a time, take us, all these years, 5 years, we ought to have it done. So big rain came, thousands of gallons of water in the attic. All of a sudden we walk up and we have this huge rainstorm. And I'm telling you, coming inside, it was like nothing I'd ever seen. We're trying to pump water out and everything like that. So we finally get things dried out. The roofer comes and he fixes it. Okay, got it fixed. Next rain comes. Here we go again, right back where we were. By then, this time we set up an extensive pumping system, and all of our grandchildren, we have some grandsons that are like 18, 19. So we're all up there trying to pump out the attic and keep more damage, and it's just, we've got buckets and tubs and everything. So he said, okay,